The marble floor of Nicholas Caruso's study reflected the lightning like a mirror of pure white fire. One crack of thunder followed, so loud it seemed to split the sky itself, and in that same moment, his 7-year-old daughter Emma collapsed onto the Persian rug. She did not fall slowly. Her body simply stopped working, like a puppet with its strings cut, and she dropped like that, all at once, her small frame hitting the floor with a sound that would live in Nicholas's chest forever. Her lips were already turning blue. The color drained from them as he watched, as if someone were stealing her breath in real time. Nicholas Caruso was 46 years old. He had clawed his way from the streets of Naples to absolute power in Las Vegas, had signed death warrants for 17 men without hesitation, had ordered disappearances that left no bodies and no questions. He had built an empire on fear and ruthlessness. His hands had done things that would make priests weep. But in that moment, on his knees beside his daughter, those hands trembled like an old man's. His mother lay crumpled 10 feet away on the same Persian rug. Her name was Alessandra. She had raised him in poverty so complete that there were nights they'd shared a single meal. She had survived wars and loss and decades of watching her son become something she barely recognized. Her face was frozen now, half of it slack and wrong, her left eye open but not seeing. The stroke had taken her mid-sentence. She had been telling Emma about the gardens in Sicily when the word stopped coming and her body went rigid. Vinny and Theo stood frozen in the doorway, their weapons useless against this. They had trained for violence, for rival operations, for the sudden appearance of men who wanted their boss dead. But they had no training for this. Neither did Nicholas. The mansion's private doctor, a man named Chen who came to the house once a week to ensure the family's health remained flawless, was stammering something about ambulance delays. The summer storm had shut down half the roads. Lightning was striking the hospital's parking lot. His voice cracked as he spoke. Fear. Nicholas had inspired fear in thousands of men, but this was different. This was the fear of helplessness. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows like fists demanding entry. The study was on the 3rd floor, all glass and open space, designed to make him feel powerful. Right now it felt like a cage. Then the door to the hallway opened. A woman in a simple grey uniform stepped through. Her name was Nora Morales. She worked as a live-in nanny for Victoria Ashford, whose mansion sat 3 properties down, but tonight she had been in the hallway carrying fresh linens when Emma's scream cut through everything. She was 28 years old and looked 40. Her dark hair was pulled back so tightly it stretched the skin at her temples. Her hands were calloused from years of scrubbing floors and washing clothes and caring for children who belonged to other people. She had $78 in the pocket of her uniform. That was all. That was everything she had left in the world. She did not hesitate. She shoved past Vinny and Theo without looking at them, without seeming to notice that they were dangerous men, that they carried weapons, that they had watched her walk past them 100 times without ever truly seeing her. She dropped to her knees beside Emma in one fluid motion. Her fingers found the child's neck, searching for the pulse point with a precision that came from somewhere deep in her body, from years of knowing how to care for small children who had no one else. Clear the desk. Now. Her voice was quiet but it cut through everything, the thunder, the rain, the sound of the doctor's stammering fear. It was a voice used to giving orders and being obeyed, though no one had ever obeyed her before in her life. Vinny, get ice. Wrap it in cloth. Get it now. Vinny moved. He moved fast, faster than he would have moved for anyone except Nicholas. Something about her voice made it impossible not to obey. You. She pointed at the doctor without taking her eyes off Emma's face. Call dispatch. Tell them code blue with seizure. Give them this address. Tell them pediatric. Tell them we have 1 minute to get her temperature down or we lose her. The doctor's hands shook as he dialed. In the background, the rain intensified. Water was beginning to pool on the study's floor where a downspout had clogged. Everything felt like it was drowning. Nora's hands moved with absolute certainty. She tilted Emma's head back. She checked the airway. She was speaking, murmuring things that made no sense. Stay with me, baby, stay with me. Your papa is here, you are safe, you are home. But her hands never wavered. When Vinnie returned with ice wrapped in cloth, she placed it on Emma's neck, under her arms, against her inner thighs where the blood ran closest to the surface. "What is your name?" Nicholas heard himself ask. His voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Like a man waking from a long sleep. "Nora." She did not look at him. She was checking Emma's pupils now, watching how they responded to the light. How long has she been seizing? 40 seconds. Maybe 60. What was her temperature this afternoon? I don't know. I don't know. She was fine. She was playing. She was fine. Nora's jaw tightened. The storm. The heat in the storm. Children sometimes spike fever so fast. She might have febrile convulsions. She is breathing. Do you see? She is breathing. The ambulance will be here in 3 minutes. We keep her cool. We keep her breathing. We do not move her. We do not scream. We stay calm so she stays calm. She was speaking to him like he was a frightened child. And he was. He was absolutely terrified in a way he had never been terrified before. This was a terror that no amount of power could touch. Alessandra lay unmoving on the Persian rug. The left side of her face was still slack, still frozen. But her right eye had found her son kneeling there beside this stranger, and something flickered across her face. Recognition. Acknowledgement. A mother watching her son experience helplessness for the first time in his adult life. The sirens came 3 minutes later, cutting through the storm like blades of sound. Red and blue light strobed across the marble floor. Paramedics rushed in with a stretcher and equipment and the kind of competence that came from having done this 1,000 times. They took Emma and moved her with extreme care. They were assessing her as they worked, asking Nora the same questions they might have asked a doctor. "She's been in and out of consciousness," Nora said. "Approximately 90 seconds of active seizure. Temperature spiking. Responsive to stimuli. Breathing strong." "You a nurse?" one of them asked. "No." Nora stepped back. She had done what she came to do. "I just take care of children." They took Emma down the hallway and down the stairs and into the ambulance. Nicholas moved to follow, but Nora caught his arm. Her hand on his sleeve was so light he barely felt it, but he stopped. "Not in the rain like that. Change your shirt. Take the car behind them. You need to be calm when you see her. Children feel their parents' fear. You show her strength or you show her panic. There is no middle ground." He looked at this woman. This stranger. This nobody in a grey uniform who had just saved his daughter's life while everyone else, everyone he paid, everyone he trusted, everyone he employed, had stood frozen and useless. "What is your name again?" "Nora Morales." He would remember that name. Though he did not know it yet, he had been watching her for 3 weeks. Ever since a night when the summer rain fell like this and he had seen her from his car window, seen her give her last dollar to a child who was crying in the street. He had watched her empty her pockets and kneel down beside that child and take the cold from him into herself, as if she could absorb his pain and make it less. But what she did not know was that Nicholas Caruso had been watching her for those 3 weeks. Watching her move through the world like she belonged nowhere, like she was a ghost passing through rooms where no one could see her. Now the sirens faded into the storm. Now Nora turned to look at Alessandra, who lay on the Persian rug with one side of her face frozen and useless. She knelt beside the older woman and took her hand, the hand that was still trembling with fear. "She is going to be okay," Nora said. "And you are going to be okay. But you need to get to a hospital. We need to get you in an ambulance too." Alessandra could not speak. The stroke had taken her words. But her hand squeezed Nora's, and in that squeeze was a kind of gratitude that transcended language. In that squeeze was a prayer. The second ambulance arrived minutes later. They moved Alessandra with the same careful competence, the same professional efficiency. Within 15 minutes, the study was empty except for Nora, standing alone on the marble floor. The rain continued. The lightning continued. The summer storm was far from finished. But the crisis was over. She cleaned the study, gathering the scattered linen she had been carrying, straightening the upended chairs, wiping the floor where the water had pooled. She moved like she had been trained for this, for cleaning up after chaos, for making beautiful spaces look as though nothing had ever gone wrong. And then she walked back down the hallway to the room where she slept. A converted closet, really. Barely larger than a coffin. This was where she had spent the last 8 years of her life, caring for children who were not hers in a house that did not belong to her, saving money that never seemed to add up to enough, watching her future disappear one day at a time. On her bed was a crumpled piece of paper. A foreclosure notice. $125,000. Due in 3 days. She had 3 days to somehow find more money than she had earned in 5 years. The rain hammered the small window above her bed. And Nora Morales, the nobody, the invisible woman in the gray uniform, the person who had just saved the daughter of the most powerful man in Las Vegas, sat on her narrow bed and counted the $78 in her pocket again. $78. 3 days. A house she was about to lose. And no idea that everything was about to change. 3 weeks before the night everything changed, Nora Morales stood outside a convenience store on East Fremont Street at 9:47 in the evening, counting crumpled bills under fluorescent lights that hummed like dying insects. $78. That was everything. The bills trembled in her hands, not from fear, though fear lived in her chest like a second heartbeat, but from exhaustion. 14-hour days caring for children who were not hers had worn her down to something thin and fragile, like paper left too long in the sun. The foreclosure notice in her purse weighed more than $78 could measure. $125,000. Due in 3 days. The small house her mother had left her, the only anchor keeping her tethered to Las Vegas after years of drifting through other people's homes, would be seized by the bank and sold to someone who never knew that her mother had planted roses in the backyard or hummed while cooking Sunday dinners or died believing her daughter would have a place to call home. Nora turned toward the bus stop. The summer heat had been relentless all day, pressing down on the city like a hand on a wound, but now the sky was changing. The air tasted metallic. The wind picked up, moving through the streets with sudden violence, and within seconds, the first drops of rain fell cold and hard against her skin. Thunder rolled across the horizon like furniture being moved in heaven. Lightning splintered the darkness into sharp white fragments. She pulled her thin cardigan tighter and quickened her pace. That was when she saw him. A small boy, maybe 6 years old, huddled beneath the bus shelter awning. His clothes were soaked through. His sneakers, held together with gray duct tape that had peeled at the corners, were waterlogged and falling apart. He clutched a toy car with one wheel missing, the kind of toy that cost 99 cents and meant everything to a child with nothing. Nora stopped walking. The boy looked up at the sound of her footsteps, and his eyes, dark and hollow in a way that children's eyes should never be, met hers. She knew that look. She had worn that look once, a long time ago, before she learned to hide it behind smiles and efficiency and the careful neutrality of someone who works in other people's homes. "Where is your mother?" Nora asked, her voice soft despite the thunder crashing overhead. The boy shook his head. One tear rolled down his cheek, mixing with the rain. She knew what that meant. She knew it the way you know your own heartbeat, from the inside, from memory, from a place deeper than words could reach. This boy was alone. This boy had counted his resources and found them wanting. This boy understood that the world was not built with children like him in mind. Nora reached into her pocket and pulled out the $78. Her hands moved without permission from her mind. She peeled off a $20 bill, the largest single piece of currency she possessed, and knelt down in the rain until her knees pressed against the wet concrete. The boy's eyes widened. "Find somewhere warm tonight," she whispered, pressing the bill into his small hand. His fingers were ice. His palm was shaking. Buy something hot to eat. Soup or rice or something that fills your belly. Will you do that? He nodded, speechless. Nora stood, soaking wet, with $58 in her pocket and absolutely no plan to save her mother's house. The rain hammered down on her shoulders. Her cardigan stuck to her skin. She smiled at the boy anyway, a real smile, the kind that cost something, and turned to walk away. What she did not know was that across the street, separated from her by 4 lanes of traffic and a river of rainwater running through the gutters, Nicholas Caruso sat in the back of a black Mercedes SUV with tinted windows so dark you could not see inside them. The vehicle idled at the curb, its engine purring with the contained power of something dangerous pretending to be still. Vinny sat in the driver's seat, watching the traffic lights cycle through colors that meant nothing in this rain. From the back, Nicholas Caruso watched through windows streaked with water, and what he saw was a woman in a gray cardigan, thin, exhausted, worn down by the kind of life that breaks most people, give away money she clearly could not afford to lose. He watched her kneel in the rain. He watched her touch that child's face with a gentleness that belonged to someone who understood suffering. He watched her smile even as her own hands trembled. He watched her stand and walk away, leaving her own crisis behind to address someone else's. Nicholas Caruso had spent 34 years climbing through darkness to reach the position he now occupied. 34 years of blood and negotiation and calculated cruelty. He had built an empire by understanding human weakness and weaponizing it. He had survived because he saw people clearly, their wants, their fears, their desperate grasping for survival, and he never, ever let emotion cloud his judgment. But something in his chest shifted as he watched this woman disappear into the rain. "Boss, who is she?" Vinny asked from the driver's seat, his voice carrying the careful tone of a man who knew better than to ask questions but could not help himself. Nicholas did not answer. He could not answer. He was still watching the place where she had been, the rain filling in her footprints as if she had never stood there at all. The traffic light turned green. Somewhere behind them, horns honked. The city moved forward, indifferent to the small moment that had just unfolded at the corner of Fremont and 3rd. "Drive," Nicholas said finally, his voice flat and distant like thunder heard from far away. Vinny shifted the vehicle into gear and pulled into traffic. As they moved through the rain-soaked streets, Nicholas sat in the darkness of the back seat and replayed what he had seen. The woman. The child. The money she could not spare. The smile that cost her something he could not quite name. In the front, Vinny's hands gripped the steering wheel. He had worked for Nicholas Caruso for 15 years and understood the subtle language of his silence. This silence was different. This silence contained something Vinny had never heard before. He said nothing and drove toward whatever came next. Back at the bus stop, the boy held the $20 bill in his small fist as if it might disappear if he did not grip it hard enough. Nora had disappeared into the rain like a prayer answered and then forgotten. The summer storm continued its assault on the city, lightning cracking across the sky like a whip made of electricity and fury. $58. That was what remained of everything Nora Morales had in the world. And she had given away the kind of hope that only the desperate can give to the more desperate, not because she had extra to spare, but because she understood that some moments demand everything, and you give it anyway. The rain fell harder. $58 remained in Nora Morales' pocket. $58, and a foreclosure notice that felt heavier than stone. 2 weeks had passed since she gave $20 to a child in the rain. 2 weeks since Nicholas Caruso watched from the rain-soaked darkness and saw something in her that made him stop the car. 2 weeks, and her entire world was collapsing exactly on schedule. The Ashford mansion sprawled across 8,000 square feet of marble and crystal and the kind of silence that only money can buy. Nora moved through its halls like a ghost, pushing a cart of freshly laundered linens through corridors where the air conditioning hummed like a living thing. Her grey uniform hung loose on her frame now. She had stopped eating full meals 3 weeks ago. Half portions stretched further. Half portions meant rent. Half portions meant her mother's house might not disappear. At 11:34 p.m. on a Thursday night, thunder cracked across the Las Vegas sky like a whip made of electricity and rage. The summer storm had been building all day, and now it arrived with the kind of violence that made the windows rattle in their frames. Nora was carrying clean linens through the connecting hallway, the private passage between the Ashford estate and Nicholas Caruso's compound next door, when she heard it. Not thunder. Something sharper. A crash. Then silence. Then a sound like breathing forced through clenched teeth. Every survival instinct screamed at her to keep walking. To pretend she heard nothing. To reach the linen closet and disappear back into the servants' world where she belonged. She stopped instead. The door to his private study stood slightly open. Light spilled into the hallway in a thin golden line. Her hand rose without her permission and pushed. Nicholas Caruso sat behind a mahogany desk the size of a small car, one hand pressed against his shoulder. Blood soaked through the white shirt that probably cost more than her rent. His jacket lay discarded on the floor. His face was pale, not with fear but with something colder, a kind of detached calculation, as if he were observing his own damage from very far away. He looked up when she entered. His eyes were dark grey, the color of storm clouds, and for a moment neither of them moved. "Sit down," Nora said. Her voice did not shake. This surprised them both. "You should leave," Nicholas said. Not a suggestion. A statement. "Sit down," she said again, and this time it was not a request. She closed the door behind her and locked it. The sound of the lock catching seemed impossibly loud in the quiet room. She moved toward him, and his hand tightened on his shoulder. The bleeding had slowed but not stopped. The wound was clean. A bullet. She knew what a bullet wound looked like. She had spent for years as her mother's nurse before her mother died anyway, before the medical bills buried them both. "I need to see it," Nora said, reaching for the first aid kit on his desk, the one that probably cost $500 and contained supplies worth more than her weekly pay. He should have stopped her. Men like Nicholas Caruso did not allow women like Nora Morales to touch them. But he did not stop her. He watched her face as she peeled back the bloody fabric of his shirt. Her hands did not shake. They moved with the muscle memory of emergency rooms and fever and wounds that refused to heal. She cleaned the wound with steady pressure. Peroxide foamed brown against torn muscle and fractured bone. She could see where the bullet had entered and where it had exited. She could see that he had been lucky in the way that men who live by violence understand luck. "Secret meeting with the Rossini family," Nicholas said quietly. "Went wrong." Negotiations became disagreements. Disagreements became gunfire. He should not have told her this. Nora understood, even through the fog of concentration, that he should not have spoken to her at all. But something about her calm competence in crisis made him talk. The same thing that had made him stop his car 2 weeks ago to watch a woman give away money she could not afford to lose. "Why are you not running?" he asked. Nora met his eyes. They were close now, closer than they had ever been, close enough that she could see the faint scar that ran from his eye to his cheekbone like a map of violence survived. "Because you would have bled out before help arrived," she said simply. She finished wrapping the wound with bandages that felt like silk against her calloused hands. Thunder cracked outside again. The rain intensified, drumming against the windows like applause for destruction. When she stepped back, Nicholas Caruso looked at her with the expression of a man who had just realized that the person standing in front of him was not at all what he had believed the world contained. "What is your name?" he asked. As if he did not already know. As if he had not ordered Vinny to learn everything about her 3 days ago. "Nora," she said. "Nora Morales. Why did you give $20 to a child in the rain when you have $58 in your pocket?" The question fell between them like a stone dropped into dark water. Nora's breath caught. He had seen. He had actually seen that moment, small and unremarkable, and he had been watching her closely enough to know exactly how much money she had left. "How much do you know?" she asked. "Everything," Nicholas said. "The house. The foreclosure. $125,000 in 3 days. The number hung in the air between them like a curse. Like a blade through her chest. Like the end of the only safe place she had ever known. Her mother's house. The small yellow house on Sunset Boulevard with the garden where her mother had taught her to grow tomatoes in the summer heat. The house where she had learned what love looked like before love abandoned her. Nora turned away. "I cannot let you do this." "You have no choice in the matter," Nicholas said, and his voice sounded like thunder heard from very far away. "The house is already saved. The foreclosure is withdrawn. The paperwork is being filed as we speak." She turned back to him, and her eyes were bright with tears that refused to fall. "Why?" "Because the people who did this to you believed you were nobody," Nicholas said quietly. "And that belief needs to be corrected." In his compound across the hallway, Vinny and Theo sat in the command center watching surveillance feeds from 12 different locations across Las Vegas. When Nicholas's emergency alert had triggered 45 minutes ago, they had mobilized. Doctors had been called. Guards had been dispatched. Weapons had been assembled. But Nicholas had sent them all away. "He has been in there for almost an hour," Theo said, watching the camera feed that showed the study door. "Alone." "Not alone," Vinny corrected quietly. "With the nanny." They exchanged a look that neither had seen in 15 years of working for Nicholas Caruso. Something had shifted in the architecture of his world, and they could both feel the tremor. Back at Nora's small house on Maple Street, the foreclosure notice sat on her converted closet bed like a dark bird that would not leave. She had read it 17 times. 17 times, as if reading it again might change the numbers. Might change the deadline. Might change the fact that in 3 days, everything her mother had left her would belong to a bank. But what she did not know was that Victoria Ashford had already begun her work. The next morning, Victoria summoned Nora to the study at 6:15 a.m. Victoria sat behind her mahogany desk in a cream silk robe, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the wood with a sound like ice clicking against glass. She had been awake all night. You could see it in the particular brightness of her eyes, the brightness of someone who had won something precious. "Nora, darling," Victoria said, her voice sweet as poison poured carefully into wine. "I am hosting a charity gala next week. You will work it. No overtime pay, of course. Think of it as gratitude for the roof over your head." Nora swallowed the humiliation. She needed this job. Every dollar. Every shift. Every hour of dignity surrendered in exchange for survival. "And Douglas Hale will be attending," Victoria continued, watching Nora's face carefully. "Such a generous man. Such resources. He has expressed interest in meeting you." The name meant nothing to Nora yet. But Victoria's smile, that particular smile that contained the entire architecture of cruelty, told her it should mean something very soon. The rain falls in sheets against the mansion windows as Nora trembles in the service hallway at 10:22 p.m. Douglas Hale's shadow blocks the light behind her, his breathing heavy, deliberate. He is 63 years old with silver hair combed back from a face that has never known genuine warmth, only the cold satisfaction of dominance. His tailored suit costs more than Nora's annual salary. A platinum watch glints on his wrist as he reaches out and grabs her arm. "I have been watching you, Nora," he says, his voice smooth as oil poured over broken glass. "Victoria tells me you refused my offer. That was foolish." His grip tightens. She feels the pressure of his fingers digging into her skin, and her heart hammers against her ribs like it is trying to escape. "I said no," Nora whispers, jerking her arm away with a strength born from pure fear. Douglas steps closer. His breath is hot on her face, smelling of expensive whiskey and something rotten beneath. "Girls like you vanish every day, Nora. Girls with no family. No money. No one who looks for them." He lets the words hang in the air between them like poison. "You have 2 choices. Come work for me willingly. I have a position in Prague that pays very well, and you will be very comfortable, or I make your life disappear. The house. The job. Everything your mother left you. Gone." she presses her back against the cold wall. The foreclosure notice flashes in her mind, 3 days. 3 days until she loses everything anyway. Or, Douglas continues, his smile returning, practiced and cruel, you could simply vanish on your own. Save yourself the trouble. He walks away down the hallway, his footsteps echoing against the marble floor with deliberate slowness. Nora stands frozen, her arm throbbing where his fingers had been, her breath coming in short gasps. The rain outside sounds like applause. What she does not know is that 3 security cameras mounted in the corners of that hallway have captured every word. Every threat. Every moment of his hand on her skin. In the war room on the opposite side of the mansion, Nicholas Caruso watches the footage on a monitor screen the size of a wall. The video plays in grayscale, but he sees everything with crystalline clarity. Nora's terror. Hale's predatory confidence. The casual way he threatened to erase her from existence. Nicholas sits motionless. His hands grip the edges of the desk, and slowly, his knuckles turn white. Vinny enters without knocking. He has learned long ago not to knock when the boss summons. Behind him comes Theo, broad-shouldered and silent, carrying a leather folder thick with documents. The footage from tonight, Vinny says quietly. Nicholas does not look away from the screen. Tell me everything about Douglas Hale. Theo opens the folder and spreads papers across the mahogany table. Financial records. Photographs. Names. So many names. Runs a trafficking network out of 3 legitimate employment agencies, Theo begins, his voice steady and clinical. Targets vulnerable women. Immigrants mostly, but also domestic cases. Girls aging out of foster care. Single mothers desperate enough to take any job. He pulls out another page. 43 confirmed disappearances in the last 2 years. We suspect the real number is higher. Victoria Ashford. Nicholas asks, still not turning from the screen. Vinny exchanges a look with Theo. Connected directly. She has been feeding him victims from her own household staff for 3 years. Douglas gives her a commission for each placement. $10,000 per woman. Nicholas finally looks away from the monitor. His eyes are dark, bottomless, like the sky before a storm. $10,000. 10,000, Vinny confirms. Nicholas stands and walks to the window. Outside, Las Vegas spreads beneath him like a kingdom of neon and sin. He can see the edge of the city where it dissolves into desert. Somewhere out there in that darkness is the small house where Nora Morales sits counting the hours until she loses everything. Contact the Rossini family, Nicholas says without turning around. His voice is level, measured, deadly. Tell them I have a gift for them. A man who traffics in human beings. Someone their sister would have wanted them to find. Vinny's breath catches. The Rossini family lost their youngest sister to traffickers 15 years ago. Her body was never found. Since then, they have made it their personal religion to hunt down anyone involved in that trade. Boss, Vinny says carefully, are you certain? Nicholas turns. His face is carved from stone. Assemble a team. 12 men. Full tactical gear. I want Douglas Hale alive and in custody within 4 hours. I want every document proving his connection to Victoria Ashford. And I want him delivered to the Rossini family at dawn. Theo nods and moves toward the door. Vinny hesitates for 1 more second, then follows. Vinny, Nicholas calls out. He stops. When this is finished, Nicholas says, no one will remember Douglas Hale's name. Do you understand? Yes, boss. The night deepens. Nora stands outside her mother's house at 11:41 p.m. as the summer storm tears through Las Vegas with ancient fury. Cold rain soaks through her thin cardigan. The wind screams through the eaves, and the foreclosure notice she clutches in her hand is nearly ripped away. She presses it against her chest instead. 3 days. That is all she has left. She thinks about Douglas Hale's threat. She thinks about Victoria Ashford's smile. She thinks about the small converted closet where she has slept for the past 2 years, folding herself into the dark each night like she could disappear if she tried hard enough. She thinks about the $63 in her pocket, no, $58 now after buying groceries for Emma. $58 to last until when? Until the bank seizes her mother's house. Until Douglas Hale makes her disappear. Maybe, she thinks, it would be easier to stop fighting. Maybe she should just accept his offer. Maybe Prague is just another name for the same cage. Thunder cracks overhead like the sky is breaking open. Then she sees it. Sitting on the porch steps, soaked by rain but unmovable, is a small toy car. Blue plastic, one wheel missing, the paint chipped and worn. She recognizes it immediately. It belongs to the boy from the bus stop, the child whose last dollar she gave away when she had only $78 to her name. Somehow, impossibly, he found her address. Somehow, he left his most precious possession on her porch as thanks. Nora picks up the toy car with trembling hands. The plastic is cold and slick. She remembers the boy's hollow eyes. She remembers the moment she chose to give her last dollar to someone else's child because kindness was the only currency that could not be devalued by banks or stolen by men like Douglas Hale. She straightens her spine. The rain pounds down on her, and she does not move. She does not look away from that small blue car. She will not disappear. She will not let Douglas Hale win. She will not let Victoria Ashford's cruelty be the final word on her story. At 3:44 a.m., Douglas Hale sleeps in his luxury penthouse apartment on the 32nd floor of the Bellagio Tower. The windows overlook the Las Vegas Strip, and neon light filters through the blackout curtains in thin lines of red and gold. He sleeps the deep sleep of a man who has never been truly afraid, never truly hunted. The breach happened simultaneously from 3 directions. 12 men in black tactical gear move through the hallway like ghosts. They wear no insignia, no markings. They are trained to move in perfect silence, only the sound of boots on carpet, barely audible, like a whisper of intention. Nicholas Caruso leads them personally. His shoulder still aches where Nora's steady hands had stitched the wound from his meeting with the rival traffickers, but he ignores the pain. Pain is simply a reminder that he is still alive, still moving, still dangerous. They breach the penthouse door with a sound like thunder. The frame splinters. The lock gives way. Douglas Hale wakes to Nicholas Caruso standing over his bed with a gun trained on his chest. The Mafia boss is tall, broad-shouldered, his face cast in shadow. There is something about him that makes the brain understand, in an instant, that this man has ended other men's lives before. That he will end this one with no more hesitation than breathing. What, you cannot, I have connections, Douglas stammers, scrambling backward on the mattress like an animal trapped in its own den. I know your connections, Nicholas says. His voice is ice. His voice is the sound of a door closing on someone's last hope. I have documented them. Every payment. Every girl. Every threat you made to a woman who was already broken. Hale's face drains of color. I will pay anything. Name your price. Anything. There is no price, Nicholas says, and something in his tone makes it clear he means this with complete finality. Some things money cannot fix. Some things money should never have touched in the first place. Vinny and Theo move in from either side. They grab Hale by the arms and wrench him from the bed. He is wearing silk pajamas that cost more than most people's monthly rent. As they drag him toward the door, he begins to scream. You do not understand what you are doing. I will destroy you. I have friends in. They take him down the hallway. Down the elevator. Out into the pre-dawn darkness where a black van waits with its engine running. The Russini family's men stand beside the van. There are 5 of them, all wearing dark coats, all wearing faces that have mourned the same loss for 15 years. Their lieutenant is a man named Paolo, in his late 50s, with a scar running from his left eye to his jawline. He lost his sister to traffickers. He has spent every day since then waiting for the chance to make someone pay. Nicholas walks Douglas Hale forward and hands him over. He is yours, Nicholas says. He runs a trafficking network. 43 confirmed victims. He threatened an innocent woman under my protection. I am giving him to you as a gesture of respect. Paolo looks at Douglas Hale, really looks at him, and something cold and ancient settles in his eyes. Thank you, Paolo says quietly. We will make sure he never does this again. They drag Hale into the van. His screams begin immediately, high and desperate and entirely without dignity. He begs. He pleads. He offers money, offers names, offers anything his terrified mind can conjure. None of it matters. None of it will save him. The van doors close. The engine revs. The van pulls away into the desert, heading toward a location no one will ever find, carrying a man who will never be seen again. Douglas Hale simply ceases to exist. At 6:15 a.m., FBI agents arrive at Victoria Ashford's mansion with a warrant that is 17 pages long. The sun is just beginning to break over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Beautiful. Innocent. Obscene. Victoria is in her bedroom, still in her silk robe, when the agents knock. By the time she reaches the door, they are already inside. Victoria Margaret Ashford, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit human trafficking, racketeering, and 43 counts of accessory to kidnapping, the lead agent says, reading from a card with the precision of someone who has done this many times before. This is absurd, Victoria says, her voice still carrying that poisoned wine quality, still convinced that her social standing will somehow protect her. I am a respected member of this community. My attorney. They handcuff her in her silk robe. They escort her down the grand staircase where she has held charity galas and hosted Las Vegas society. Photographers have gathered outside, alerted by an anonymous tip that came from someone inside Nicholas Caruso's organization. They capture every moment. Victoria's shock. Her horror. The particular degradation of a powerful woman being escorted to a federal vehicle in her bedroom clothes while the sun rises on her former kingdom. The charges are listed in the newspapers by afternoon. Federal court documents unsealed and distributed to every media outlet in the state. Financial records showing her commission payments from Douglas Hale. Emails discussing placement of suitable candidates. Testimony from rescued victims identifying her as the woman who hired them, promised them work, then handed them over to men who took everything. 40 years minimum sentence. Federal prison. No parole possibility. Nicholas watches from his car parked across the street. He watches Victoria being loaded into the federal vehicle. He watches her final moment of dignity evaporate like water on hot asphalt. Justice is not death. Death would be too quick, too easy, too merciful. Justice is a lifetime in a cell, knowing that the nobody nanny she tried to destroy brought her entire empire crashing down. Justice is 40 years of knowing that her perfect reputation was only ever as solid as the lie she built it on. Justice is a woman named Nora Morales, who gave her last dollar to a child in the rain, and in doing so, set in motion the chain of events that would bring Victoria Ashford to ruin. The rain falls softer now. The storm is passing. And somewhere in Las Vegas, in a small house on Maple Street, Nora Morales holds a toy car in her trembling hands and begins, finally, to believe in tomorrow. The morning sun breaks across the garden like liquid gold, and Nora Morales sits alone on a stone bench worn smooth by decades of weather and time. Her hands tremble. The toy car with one missing wheel sits in her palms, Emma's toy car, the one the little girl had pressed into her hands 3 nights ago when the fever came and the world tilted sideways into terror. She does not know what happened in the hours after the ambulance screamed away from Nicholas's mansion. She does not know that Douglas Hale was taken from his penthouse at 4:17 in the morning by 12 men in black suits who moved like ghosts through the darkness. She does not know that Victoria Ashford's arrest was photographed, documented, broadcast to 7 million people before the sun rose. She only knows that the threats have gone silent. The fear has lifted like fog burning away in heat. Footsteps approach on the stone pathway. Measured. Deliberate. Not the quick, shuffling steps of a servant but the measured gait of a man who owns the ground beneath his feet. Nicholas Caruso sits beside her without asking permission. He wears an open-collared shirt, expensive and simple, and his jaw is shadowed with exhaustion that money cannot erase. His dark eyes, storm gray in certain light, fix on the toy car in her hands. "You saved them," Nora whispers. Her voice trembles like a candle in the wind, barely holding its shape. "Victoria. Hale. They are gone." "Yes. You did that. For them. For me. I did that because I am not the man you think I am," Nicholas says quietly. His voice is deep, solid like an oath, each word deliberate and measured. "You are right that I am a criminal. That I have done things that would make you run screaming into the night and never look back. But what I am not is someone who forgets a debt. A year ago, my daughter was dying. My mother was in the hospital having a stroke. My entire world was collapsing into a darkness I could not control." He pauses. A sound rises from the city below, traffic, distant and muted. He continues. "Everyone froze. My doctors. My men. Even I froze, standing there like a statue made of stone and ice. But you did not. You moved when it mattered. You stayed when you should have run." Nora cannot speak. Her throat has closed. Nicholas pulls a document from his jacket. Legal paper, cream-colored, official seals in blue and red. "The foreclosure on your mother's house has been paid in full. The deed is yours. There is also a bank account in your name. $240,000. It is yours, no conditions, no repayment. Not because I am good, but because you were." "I cannot," Nora starts, but her voice fractures. "You can," Nicholas says, and his tone shifts, firmer now, a man accustomed to being obeyed. "And before you argue with me, understand that I will not listen to objections. You gave your last dollar to a child in the rain when you were 3 days from losing everything. You sat beside a bleeding stranger and did not call the police. You saved my family when you owed us nothing. Let me do this one good thing. Let me be someone other than what I have always been. At least once." Nora's tears fall on the legal document. The ink does not smudge. The paper is expensive, made to last. She takes his hand. His grip is warm. Solid. Real. The following months reshape her like water reshaping stone. Nicholas insists she move to the guest house on his property, a beautiful structure with real windows and natural light, with a bedroom instead of a converted closet, with a kitchen where she can cook actual meals instead of counting crumpled bills. She becomes Emma's nanny officially, but everything is different now. She is paid a salary that would have seemed impossible a year ago. She is treated with respect by the household staff. Vinny and Theo, who once barely noticed her existence, now nod to her in the hallways, protective and respectful in ways that make her feel seen. She watches Nicholas with Emma in the early mornings. He reads to her picture books about animals and adventures, and his scarred hands, hands that have signed orders and destroyed empires, turn pages with infinite gentleness. She learns that his father was violent, brutal, that Nicholas climbed out of poverty through a mixture of intelligence and ruthlessness. She learns that he made a vow decades ago that no child would ever suffer like he suffered. That Emma represents something sacred to him, a chance to be the father he never had. His mother recovers from the stroke with Nora's help. She teaches herself the exercises, the physical therapy, the patience required to rebuild a life after the body betrays you. Nicholas's mother takes Nora's hand one afternoon and says only, "Thank you for saving my son." Not for saving her. For saving him. 11 months after the morning in the garden, Nora graduates from nursing school. She stands in her white coat, her stethoscope around her neck, and thinks about the girl who counted crumpled bills and ate leftovers from other people's garbage. That girl feels like a different person now. Someone from another lifetime. She takes a position at St. Mary's Pediatric Hospital. She becomes the nurse that children trust immediately, the one who hums quietly while checking vital signs, who sits with scared parents at 2 in the morning, who remembers that medicine is not just chemistry but compassion. She rents a small penthouse in a building downtown, modest but hers, earned through her own work and no one else's charity. The deed sits in a frame on her wall. Paid in full. Hers. But she thinks about Nicholas Caruso every restless night. She dreams about his hands. His voice like thunder. The way he looked at her in the garden when she was broken and he was trying to become something other than what the world had made him. 1 year after the night Emma's fever broke and everything changed, Nora stands at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse at sunset. The city spreads below her like a circuit board of light, millions of people living millions of small lives, most of them invisible to everyone but themselves. She wears a simple blue dress. Her nursing school diploma hangs framed on the wall behind her. She is successful. Free. No longer desperate. No longer invisible. She hears the door open behind her. She left it unlocked. Somehow she knew he would come. Nicholas Caruso steps into her space. He looks different than she has ever seen him. Tired. Vulnerable. Not the untouchable crime boss with the scar running from eye to cheekbone and the gold watch worth more than some people's houses. Just a man who has carried something heavy for too long and finally needs to put it down. I have been trying to find the right words for a year, he says quietly. His voice carries through the room like thunder at a distance, powerful but soft enough not to break things. Nora turns to face him. The city lights blur through the windows behind her. A year ago I watched you save my daughter's life, Nicholas continues. I watched you move when everyone else froze. But that was not the moment I knew. I knew the night I saw you give your last dollar to a child in the rain. You had nothing. You were 3 days from losing everything. And you chose kindness anyway. His voice cracks slightly. The sound is devastating because it is unprecedented. In 15 years, Vinny and Theo have never heard Nicholas Caruso's voice break. I have spent my life building power, he says. I can make men kneel with a word. I can destroy empires before breakfast. But power means nothing, absolutely nothing, without someone willing to choose you when everything falls apart. You chose to stay when you should have run. You chose to help when you owed me nothing. You showed me that the strongest thing in this world is not violence or money or fear. It is the choice to be kind when kindness costs you everything. Nora's eyes fill with tears. Outside, summer thunder rumbles in the distance, a storm approaching but not yet arrived. I am not asking you to save me again, Nicholas says, stepping closer until she can feel the warmth radiating from him. I am asking if you would let me spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the woman who gave her last dollar away in the rain. Nora closes the distance between them. Her hand finds his. His grip is warm and solid and real. You already are, she whispers. They stand together at the window as the city lights blur through their tears. Outside, the storm moves closer. Inside, finally, they are home. Family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. Remember that. Carry it with you. If this story moved your heart, drop a like right now and share it with someone who needs to remember that one act of kindness can change everything. Subscribe because tomorrow we have another story that will hit you just as hard. Comment below, what would you have done in Nora's position? Thank you for watching, and remember, the smallest gestures create the biggest ripples.